Hello and a very big welcome to all the viewers watching Soul to Soul Talk Show. In this episode, we will be continuing this spiritual journey with Brother Anthony Phillipps from UK. Welcome to the show, brother. A pleasure to have you with us. So, in the previous episode, brother had shared with us that we have all been using a wrong formula in our life, and that is what happens decides what you feel. But the correct formula is just switching the two halves of it. That is, how you feel decides what happens. But brother, I still feel it is, it sounds very simple in words, but still it does feel very difficult to work on.
In fact, okay, so it's what's going on, so how do I feel?
Right.
I think you can understand that because actually anyone watching this program is operating by that formula. What's going on? They're listening to a fantastic program. How do they feel? Great. I don't think I'll turn the TV off. Or, on the other end of the spectrum, they may go, wow, this guy's a blithering idiot. And they're very happy to turn the TV off. So all the time, everybody is organizing and orchestrating the world so that they feel 5 basic things: peace, love, happiness, contentment, and authenticity. Yeah, and then by that they are self-empowered. You know, everyone wants to be powerful, be empowered. But the problem is, as we discussed, is that this is ephemeral and can be destroyed. I mean, you know, at any time, if you're operating by that formula, if things outside you aren't good, then you have to fix them or suffer. And because now the world's much more complicated and difficult place than it ever used to be, there's more and more suffering. And so the question is, how can we change that?
Right.
And this very, very, very fundamental formula is, how do I feel? Now what's going on? It's not, how do I feel? Let me make what's going on different. Because actually, making what's going on different is just using the first formula. So it's not about, I feel good, now everything's fine. It's, I am who I am. And that's the big question, who the heck am I? Now what's going on? Oh, you've got a gun pointed at my head, have you? Or, oh, you're giving me 1,000,000 rupees, are you? Or whatever it is.
Right.
So the first step is to sit on your realization of yourself, on your own throne. You know, this stuff we teach in Brahma Kumaris is Raja Yoga. It's the yoga of the kings. There aren't any kingdoms available, I don't think, anyway, except the kingdom of the self. So the first thing is you've got to find your throne. And the throne, or the cinema seat, if you like, of the soul, is sitting on your own recognition of the self. And so this question, who am I, comes up. And you can't just describe it, oh, I am a being of peace, love, happiness, contentment, purity, and power, because that's just words. And so if I tell you that, you'll be going, well, thanks, that's nice to know, but I don't feel it. So, okay, so you've got to do a bit of work to feel it, to recognize it. And then you have to sit on that throne, on that realization all the time. And there's a huge problem. It's impossible to do. And so what do you do? Well, actually, what you do is you have to learn. Now, when you want to learn anything, the whole educational process is almost identical no matter what you want to learn. Now, I don't know, what's your profession?
I've done engineering.
You're an engineer?
Right.
Okay. So, in order to become an engineer, basically, if you strip away all the details, you only did 2 things. Now, you may think you did a lot more. You went to university and you worked very hard and all that kind of stuff. And that's details. But actually, you did only 2 things. The first thing you did was something like this. You went like this. I think I want to become an engineer. Because I don't know whether you noticed, you cannot spontaneously become an engineer. You have to make the decision. You know, you may not be able to ever do it, but you have to make the decision, I want to become something. So that's the first step. Second step, actually what you did when you said, I want to become an engineer, is you found another engineer and you stared at them for about 3-5 years, whatever it was. Now, you think you went to university, which happened to be full of engineers, and you've got lots of books, which is really just a virtual engineer without the human being there. you basically had yoga with, you made connection with, you stared at another engineer. And by staring at the other engineer, you became an engineer. So, if you want to become an engineer, find an engineer, stare at them, have yoga with them, and then by magic, after a few obstacle courses, otherwise known as exams, you become an engineer. That's how it works. So, go back to this whole problem of becoming an aficionado of the second formula. What you have to do is find someone that is fully in that formula. I am a being of peace, love, happiness, contentment, authenticity, power, happiness. Now what's happening? Well, news for you, I haven't made it. And I've never met anyone yet who's made it. And this is where the subject of God comes in. Because it is my understanding that God, a soul, just like me, but with a huge difference. That is that God never lost the plot, never forgot, never started operating the old formula. God only operates the second formula. So if I stare at God, just like if I stare at a doctor or I stare at an engineer or I stare at a hairdresser, if I want to become one of those things, I will become not God, because when you stared at your engineer teachers, they didn't become them, you became like them.
Right.
So if I stare at God, if I have yoga with God, I will, as a natural consequence of the process, which is very ordinary, it's a totally ordinary thing, it's the educational process, I will become like God. Now, what does that mean? It means that I operate the second formula. I become empowered, I draw power. You know, I think people think, oh, if I sit in front of God, then some kind of laser beam, spiritual laser beam will come and make me have spiritual muscles that are very good and light will come from my... It's the rubbish. This stuff is very ordinary.
Right.
It is natural. Because what God is doing by doing this process with us is bringing us back to our natural, normal, original state. He's not making us into anything extraordinary. He is bringing us back to our origin. And that's it. It's so simple. And, you know, all God has to do is sit there and remind us. He gives a little bit of information. Hey, buddy, you're a soul. You know, have you ever been in a train? As an Indian, you should have.
Yes,
there are a lot of them around.
I have traveled by train.
You've been in a train, in a station, next to another train. Do you remember that? You're in a train in a station next to another train.
Yes.
And then the other train moves.
Right.
What did you think?
Yes, you feel you're
You thought you were going the other way.
Right.
Well, it's like we have been in that 2 second or 1 second thought, we're going that way, when actually the other train's going that way. But instead of being in that situation for 2 seconds, we've been there for 10 seconds, 10 minutes, 10 years, thousands of years. It's like the whole of our culture, all of our society, the whole world has been in a big worldly carriage and thinks that it's going that way, when really the other train's going this way. And it's like God comes along and opens the door and says, excuse me, chaps, but the other train's moving. That is the difference between body consciousness and soul consciousness. So when you become soul conscious, everything turns upside down. Everything. And then, of course, because we're so used to it, because we're so used to thinking our train is going that way, and we go, oh yeah, that's great, oh I understand, yeah, that sounds great, wonderful. But then, in a second, all the time, we forget. So this is the game of forgetting and remembering. And if you come and join up with the Brahma Kumaris, there'll be a lot of this word, remember. Remember God, remember who you are. Remember what's going on. Which is not spiritual mumbo-jumbo. And it's not religion. You know, I'm giving you what looks like information. And so afterwards you can say, oh, Anthony said this, this, and this. Remember what I said 2 programs ago. The truth is not information.
Right.
The truth actually is seeing who I really am, seeing what's really going on, seeing who I really belong to. That's the truth. And then the vibration coming from that will deliver harmony, happiness, and sunshine in the mind.
Staring at God, how do you do that?
Well, staring at God is just my very, very cheeky way of having yoga with, making a connection with. So when you're concentrating on me and remembering me, you are having yoga with me. And everyone thinks, oh, I'm not a yogi, but everyone's a yogi. Everyone at some time or another, if they're over the age of 16, has been in love. And they've also at some time or another been in love and done the washing up at the same time. And isn't it extraordinary that we can be doing the washing up and our mind is with the one we love? So everyone has had that experience or something similar. That's yoga. It's not rocket science.
Yeah, but then that's a person. So
so now you ask yourself the question, who do you want to have yoga with? Most people have yoga with their worries.
Right.
So really the effort isn't to be all perfect. It's to remember the right one. And based on this talk that I've been saying about this formula, and if you think it's a good idea, then you say, well, okay, then having yoga with somebody who actually hasn't lost the plot and who is doing the right formula, then maybe that will kind of help me. So that's why you do it. You don't do it because it's sort of, oh, it's good to remember God. You do it because it makes sense, because it makes you powerful, it makes you real, it makes you actually capable of helping the world. Because if you're operating by the second formula, you're just a ping pong ball. That's all. If you're operating by the second formula, then you're qualified to help. You are stable, powerful, helpful, beautiful. You don't actually have to do anything.
You become like God.
Well, you become like God, not in the ways that people kind of think about in the scriptures, but you have the qualifications of God, which are just, God is remembered as the ocean of peace, the ocean of love, the ocean of happiness, the ocean of contentment, all these things. We are like a river of that.
But how do you remember God like throughout your day?
No, I mean, they say you should. I don't really. I'm
then
not
how
really
do you
good at that.
remember God? Like, do you take out time for Him, or
No, but I tell you what I've done. There are basically 4 things I do for my spiritual progress, and I call them the 4 C's because I can remember that. And the first thing is company. So my biggest spiritual effort isn't to get up early in the morning and remember God. It's to hang around with people who are spiritual and who are doing this work. Because I have this theory that you become like the people you hang around with. So what I've done is I've looked for the best people who in the West, in my opinion, are at the Global Retreat Centre in Oxford. And it's a nice place and it's got good food and all that sort of thing. So it's very easy to hang around there. So you hang around and you become like them. So, if you want to become, if you want to become a boxer, hang around boxers, and you'll be boxing in no time at all. It's like we become. You did this with engineers. If you want to become an engineer, hang around engineers. It's like So, company, the company you keep, incredibly important. Second one I talked about a couple of programs back, churning, because material is just material. It's not the truth. It's just material. And yes, the Brahma Kumari's got lots of lovely material, but it's useless unless you churn it. The only other thing you're going to do with it is irritate other people by telling them it and trying to make them feel guilty for not being whatever it is that you think they should be. So just churn it. And then by churning it, you become like it. And then your presence gives the message. So it's company, churning, and then the other one is consistency. So the Brahma Kumaris have a sort of a kind of a consistent rhythm to our lives. So we get up early in the morning and we go to class and we have meditation and we do traffic control and all these kinds of things. Great. You choose what you want to do and you do it consistently. And yeah, I know that for me, over the last 30 years, okay, I wasn't very good to begin with, then I kind of got easy because it just became my own rhythm, and now I do it completely naturally. So getting up early in the morning, going to class and all this stuff, it's not an effort for me at all, it's just my rhythm.
But was it an effort initially?
Of course it was an effort originally. Have you ever tried getting up at 4 in the morning?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, it's not so easy. This stuff it's not easy. They call it easy Raj Yoga, but it's just to suck you in. So you got company, churning, consistency, and the last one, my personal favorite, and it should be an F, but I call it a C, for cooking. Because I'm personally understand that what we put in our mouths has a very, very profound effect on the mind. And since the tool that I use for all this stuff that I'm talking about is the mind, I think I should give myself the best possible opportunity. And so we, in the Brahma Kumaris, we have vegetarian food, we have a sattvic diet, and we also try to cook in the remembrance of God, so the kind of the vibe thing is there. And I find it helps a lot. I mean, I don't know whether you've noticed, but any food you eat with the Brahma Kumaris, it doesn't matter whether you're a BK or not, everyone always loves it.
Right.
It's like the mum's cooking, the mother puts a lot of love in it. So these things, company, churning, consistency, and cooking, that actually is the sum total of my spiritual effort. And the result of that is, yes, I live a life of a certain rhythm, that if you were looking at me from the outside, he's a BK, I find that I'm attracted to certain things that are more spiritually orientated and certain things that actually take you into body consciousness. I find, I never said, I mustn't eat meat, or I mustn't drink, or I mustn't smoke. I just didn't want to do it. And if you don't want to do something, why do it?
You didn't want to do it after
it just drops away. It drops away. If you force yourself not to do something, what's that? It's what I call, and I told you about it 2 programs ago, it's just looking good syndrome. And it's easy to look good, and you can do it for a long time. You might even be able to get away with it until you die.
Right.
But do you want to live like that? I don't think so. The whole thing about living a spiritual life is that it's terribly natural and terribly flowing and beautiful. And that's the kind of life I want. I don't want to worry, and I don't want to stress out about anything. I don't want to feel guilty about anything. And there's all sorts of other material that we learn about. We have this concept of drama and understanding the past, the present, and the future, and seeing things in context that are very, very helpful because of our old formula, what's going on, so how do I feel? There's a very, very deeply ingrained sense of what is just and what is unjust. And that's a huge problem if you want to become free. But it's probably not the subject of today's interview because we don't have enough time. So.
And these 4 C's that you spoke about, how did that help you in making this connection, this yoga with God?
I used to sit and go, the thing about yoga is that you can never tell when anyone's doing it very well or not. So for me to stare at the camera and say I'm in yoga, I may or may not be.
Are you a yogi?
Yeah, am I a yogi? So what was yogi? So remembering God is very interesting. I would say
how do you use God in your life? Something like that.
I don't really know. I don't know. Let me answer that first question. Remembering God. I always wonder, when you have a picture of a dot on the wall and sort of red round, am I remembering the picture of God or am I remembering God? It's a problem. And this is a question. So I would say that I go into a zone. And it's got to do with feeling and vibe. And am I in that vibration? Then I would say that I'm remembering God. But remembering God is all right. I find the most important thing for me to do is remember I'm a soul. And I think my kind of minute by minute homework is to check whether I'm soul conscious or not whether I'm remembering God.
Every minute you check that.
Yeah, I don't check like, am I soul conscious? What happens is that something turns up.
Okay, what do you mean by soul consciousness?
Yeah, well, soul conscious is, well, this is a big subject.
Okay, in short.
You know the train station
Huh.
thing that I was
Right.
talking about?
Mm.
Am I remembering that the other train's moving? So the soul is the traveler,
Hmm.
and every scene in the drama is set, and I travel through the scenes. This is a concept that we think about.
Mhm.
But my question to anyone is, how long is a scene? And of course, most people think in terms of a Shakespearean scene, where you have the scene of the two of us sitting here in the studio doing this. This is a scene in a drama. Well, I don't think so. I think it's trillions of scenes. I personally think each scene is a very, very, very small section. And each scene is dead still. And as I move through scenes, then in soul consciousness, I remember I'm moving through the scene. But in body consciousness, I think I'm moving my hand across my body. So that's something to think about. Yeah. And of course, if I am aware that I'm moving my hand across my body, like this, I think everyone can see on the camera, then that awareness that my hand is moving across my body is, in my opinion, very body conscious. But if I'm aware that the soul is visiting each scene, and when it strings them together, the scenes have changed, then I can really operate this formula that I'm talking about. I'm the traveler. Now, see these scenes. Because if I'm sitting in meditation and I'm looking at a scene, and I see the arms and I see the studio and everything, I'm also seeing the tops of my legs and the backs of my hands. So these two, the backs of my hands, the tops of my legs, they have the same status as the armchair. They're just objects. And I'm, moment by moment. And, you know, if you want to know how long a scene is, I can tell you it's one Planck length. But there we've gone into quantum physics, and you don't want to go there. It's my personal favorite subject.
Okay.
And in fact, the people who are worried about figuring out string theory and M theory and whatever other theories are going on, the guys dealing in the area of quantum mechanics, they're dealing with issues that we're dealing with. We operate from a kind of religious, kind of scriptural, spiritual mumbo-jumbo activity. They operate from a kind of mathematical, kind
Scientific.
of, from an angle. But what's so interesting is that they come up with the same ideas. And of course they're explained completely differently. And I would say that we, on the kind of more spiritual side, have what I call magical thinking. In other words, we don't worry about having to explain everything. And the guys, the scientists, do worry about having to explain everything, and their language is mathematics, and they have actually some very sophisticated tools to explain it. And these tools are actually far more credible to the outside world. Not that anyone understands anything, but they're just credible. And it's really not credible when I say, you know,
Right.
you are a being of peace, trust me, I'm telling you. But
Right.
and it is more credible when a mathematician says, you know, E equals mc squared, or the spiritual equivalent, and therefore and therefore and thus and so. And so, you know, it's all a question of credibility. But people have intuitions and they have attractions and all this kind of stuff, and that's the world we live in. It's wonderful. I personally don't like doing anything out of blind faith, and I don't like doing anything that doesn't make sense. And although on the surface, a lot of what the Brahma Kumari says doesn't make sense, when you go deep, it makes a lot of sense. And it's extremely powerful and worthwhile. But because we have so many preconceptions and so many powerful feelings, then it's not possible.
So in this episode, we got to know that the two simple steps that we need to take is to decide and to find a person, that is God, whom we can connect with to change this formula and make it right. That is how you feel, and then you see what happens. We will be talking more about Brother Anthony's connection with God and the relationship that he shares with him in the next episode, and hoping you will join us soon in it too. I'll be taking leave now. Thank you, brother, for joining us in this episode.
Thank you.
Thank you, viewers, for staying with us. Have a great day.